Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome everyone. Our today's lecture is on code switching. This is our third topic in bilingualism. In linguistics, code switching or language alternation occurs when a speaker alternates between two or more languages or two or more language varieties in the context of a single conversation. So it can be a case of using two or more languages, or using two or more language varieties in the dialects, two or more dialects in the same language in the context of single conversation. Multilinguals, the speakers of more than one language, sometimes they use elements of multiple language when conversing with each other. So what we get here, that code switching is the use of more than one linguistic variety in a manner that is consistent with the syntax and phonology of each variety. In the 1940s and the 1950s, many scholars considered code switching to be a substandard use of language. So it was not regarded as the normal use of a language. But since 1980s, most scholars have come to regard it as a normal, natural product of bilingual and multilingual language use. The term code switching is also used outside the field of linguistics. Some scholars of literature use the term to describe literary styles that include elements from more than one language, like in the novels by Chinese American, Anglo-Indian or Latino writers. In popular usage, code switching is sometimes used to refer to relatively stable informal mixture of two languages, such as Spanglish, Taglish or Hinglish. Both in popular usage and in sociolinguistic study, the name code switching is sometimes used to refer to switching among dialects, styles or registers. This form of switching is practiced, for example, by speakers of African American vernacular English as they move from less formal to more formal settings. Such shifts, when performed by public figures such as politicians, are sometimes criticized as signaling inauthenticity or insincerity. So here we have some of the distinguishing features of code switching. Code switching is distinct from other language contact phenomena such as borrowing, pigeons and carols, and loan translation calculus. Borrowing affects when you borrow some language from other language. So it affects the lexicon, the vocabulary, the words that make up a language, while code switching, it does not affect anything. It takes place in individual utterances. Regarding pidgin, speakers form and establish a pidgin language when two or more speakers who do not speak a common language, so who do not speak or who do not understand each other's language, so they form an intermediate, a third language to communicate. So if you compare code switching with pidgin, so speakers practice code switching when they are each fluent in both the languages. So this is totally opposite. In pidgin, both the speakers, they do not speak each other's language, but in the case of code switching, both the speaker and the listener, they both are fluent in both the languages. Code mixing is a thematically related term, but the usage of the term code switching and code mixing varies. Some scholars use either term to denote the same practice, while others apply code mixing to denote the formal linguistic properties of a language contact phenomena, and code switching to denote the actual spoken usage by a multilingual person. So here code mixing is denoted to a formal linguistic properties of a language contact phenomena, and code switching is used to denote the actual spoken usage by multilingual persons. There is much debate in the field of linguistics regarding the distinction between code switching and language transfer. According to Jenny Treffers-Dahler, she said that considering code switching and language transfer as similar phenomena is helpful only if one wants to create a theory that is as parsimonious as possible, and therefore it is worth attempting to aim for such a unified approach. So unless there is a compelling evidence that this is not possible. Not all linguists agree on whether code switching and language transfer should be considered a similar phenomenon. So in some cases, linguists refer to the benefits and disadvantages of language transfer as two separate phenomena. That is, language transference is considered as the benefit of language transfer, and language interference as the disadvantage of language transfer. So in such views, these two kinds of language transfer along with code switching can comprise what is known as cross-linguistic influence. Part of this debate may be solved by simply clarifying some key definitions. For example, linguists sometimes use different terminology to refer to the same phenomena. So they use different terminology for one phenomena, which can make it confusing to distinguish between two phenomena from one another in investigative discourse. For example, we see here psycholinguists frequently make use of the term language switching. Psycholinguists, they frequently make the use of the term language switching in reference to the controlled and willed switching. Controlled and willed switching to another language. However, this term is hardly used by linguists who are working on natural code switching. So the psycholinguists, they use language switching, okay, if in the context of controlled and willed switching to another language, but the linguists who are working on natural code switching, they hardly use this term. Linguists claimed that code switching involves switching between languages, but a multilingual speaker who is fluent in the languages being alternated can alleviate the contention, the belief behind this debate. This is so because language transfer does not require switch between language systems to be done by a multilingual speaker, and as a result, this can explain for transfer errors when proficiency in one language is lower than the proficiency of the speaker in the other. On the other hand, there are linguists that maintain that code switching and transfer are manifestations of the same phenomena that is, the influence of one language on another uh, is an attractive null hypothesis that can be tested in experimental setting. There are several reasons for code switching in a conversation. Uh, a particular topic, people generally switch codes during discourse about a particular topic. When specific language is necessary or preferred, alternative speech may better convey relevant concepts. Quoting someone, people will switch codes while quoting another person. Solidarity and gratitude. When expressing gratitude or solidarity, code switching can occur unintentionally or intentionally, of fostering a rapport. I mean, if you want to thank somebody, so you switch your code. Thank you very much. आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. Like this, to develop your rapport, your relationship, to show, to express solidarity with the person you're speaking to. Clarification. So this is another reason for code switching. A speaker may engage in code switching when listeners have difficulty comprehending specific words or concepts initially, or when the speaker does not know or remember the appropriate words in one of the languages. So it can be for clarification when the listeners have difficulty in comprehending the specific words or concepts initially. So the speaker repeats it, or he changes, switches the code, he changes the language, or if the speaker doesn't find the appropriate words of one language, so he moves to the other language that can better express his ideas or thoughts. A group identity. People may alter their language to express group identification. So this can happen, for example, when introducing members of a particular group to others. To soften or strengthen command. While asking someone to do something, code switching works to mark emphasis or provide inspiration. So ये आपका homework है. You have to do it. A lexical need. This is another reason. People often use technical or idiomatic speech from a foreign or non-primary language, and code switching occurs when translating such words or phrases could distort the precise meaning. I mean, so there is lexical need to switch code, because there is some idiomatic language, okay, that you are using, and if you translate that that language, that piece of language, that can distort the meaning. So to save those meanings, so you switch code. Types of code switching. Scholars use different names for various types of code switching. Intersentential switching. So intersentential switching occurs outside the sentence or clause level, that is, at sentence or clause boundaries. Is sometimes called extrasentential switching as well. For example, in Assyrian English switching, one could say Assyrian and English switching, one could say any vidili, what happened, those I did them, what happened. Here you see, so it is any vidili, and there is full stop, and it's happening outside the sentence. So this type of code switching is called extrasentential or intersentential switching. Intrasentential switching is the opposite of intersentential switching. In this, the intrasentential switching occurs within a sentence or a clause. For example, in Spanish English switching, one could say, this is a Spanish clause or phrase, la onda is to fight ya jambar. That means the latest fad is to fight and steal. The latest fashion, latest trend is to fight and steal. So you can see here the latest fad. So this is within the sentence, it's not outside the sentence. So all Spanish and English is together, part of one sentence. Tag switching. Tag switching is the switching of either a tag phrase or a word, or both, from one language to another. That is common in intrasentential switches. In intrasentential switches, this is common, tag switching. For example, in Spanish English switching, one could say LSD Mexico y así los criaron elos. It's very difficult for me, you know. And in the end is, you know, this is tag. He's from Mexico and they raise them like that, you know. So here we have here a tag phrase that is tagged into the sentence. So this is part of this is a type of intrasentential switching. Intra-word switching. Here we are going deeper into the syntactical items. Intra-word switching occurs within a word itself, such as at a morpheme boundary. So here, for example, in Shona English switching, one could say but ma daya saya no ya. Okay, anyway, it means but these days I don't see him much. But these days I don't see him much. So what's here to be noticed is that English plural morpheme s appears alongside the Shona prefix ma, which also marks plurality. So here you see the English plural s is there with the prefix of ma alongside the Shona prefix ma, which also marks plurality. So this is not Shona, but this is English, but it marks, it's used here and it marks plurality. So this is introvert switching, code switching. Some social theories about code switching. Code switching relates to and sometimes it indexes social group membership in bilingual and multilingual communities. Some social linguists describe the relationship between code switching, behavior, and class, ethnicity, and other social positions. In addition, scholars in interactional linguistics and conversation analysis have studied code switching as a means of structuring speech in interaction. Some discourse analysts, including conversation analyst Peter Oyer, suggests that code switching does not simply reflect social situations, but that it is a means to create social situations. So it's not only to reflect social situation, code switching, but it is a means to create social situations. Markness model. This is one of the social theories. The Markness model, developed by Carol Myers-Cotton, is one of the more complete theories of code switching motivations. It posits that language users are rational. So language users are rational and they choose to speak a language that clearly marks their rights and obligations. So relative to other speakers in the conversation and its setting. So this is the claim of this theory, that the language users are rational and they choose to speak language that clearly marks their rights and obligations, and is relative to other speakers and the conversation that is in the setting, in the context. When there is no clear unmarked language choice, speakers practice code switching to explore possible language choices. So many social linguists, however, they object to the Markness model's postulation that language choice is entirely rational. So they object, they say that language choice is not entirely rational, as is claimed by Markness model. Sequential analysis. This is another theory. Scholars of conversation analysis such as Peter Oyer and Lee Wei argue that the social motivation behind code switching lies in the way code switching is structured and managed in conversational interaction. So in other words, the question of why code switching occurs cannot be answered without first addressing the question of how it occurs. Using conversation analysis, these scholars focus their attention on the sequential implications of code switching. I mean, to find out the answer of how code switching occurs, so they focus on the sequential implications of code switching. So this is whatever language a speaker chooses to use for a conversational turn or part of a turn impacts the subsequent choices of language by the speaker as well as the hearer. So whatever whatever language the speaker chooses, it affects the subsequent choices of the language by the speaker and the hearer as well. So rather than focusing on the social values inherent in the languages the speaker chooses, brought along meaning, the analysis concentrates on the meaning that the act of code switching itself creates, that is brought about meaning. Communication accommodation theory. This is also one of the theories. The communication accommodation theory, developed by Howard Giles, professor of communication at the University of California, Santa Barbara, seeks to explain the cognitive reasons for code switching and other changes, and other than not the social reason, but he's looking to explain the cognitive reasons for code switching and other changes in speech as a person either emphasizes or minimizes the social differences between himself and the other person in the conversation. Giles posits that when speakers seek approval in a social situation, they are likely to converge their speech with that of the other speaker. This can include, but is not limited to, the language of choice, accent, dialect, and paralinguistic features used in the conversation. In contrast to convergence, speakers might also engage in divergent speech, in which an individual person emphasizes the social distance between himself and the other speakers by using speech with linguistic features characteristics of his own group. So here we will see now some of the linguistic theories on code switching after social theories. In studying the syntactic and morphological patterns of language alternation, linguists have postulated specific grammatical rules and specific syntactic boundaries for where code switching might occur. So they have postulated specific grammatical rules and specific syntactic boundaries for where code switching might occur. So let's see what are these rules and boundaries. Constraint based model. Shana Poplack's model of code switching is an influential theory of grammar of code switching. In this model, code switching is subject to two constraints. There are two constraints for code switching. If these constraints are fulfilled, code switching can occur. The free morpheme constraint, the first one, it demands that code switching cannot occur between a lexical stem and bound morphemes. Essentially, this constraint distinguishes code switching from borrowing. So it's different from borrowing. Generally, borrowing occurs in the lexicon, while code switching occurs at either the syntax level or the utterance construction level. The equivalence, the second constraint, is the equivalence constraint. It predicts that switches occur only at points where the surface structures of the languages coincide, or between sentence elements that are normally ordered in the same way by each individual grammar. So this equivalence constraint, it predicts that switches can occur only if the surface structures of both the languages are same. For example, the sentence "I like you porque eres simpático," I like you because you are nice, is allowed because it obeys the syntactic rules of both Spanish and English. So we are still talking about the equivalence constraint here. Cases like the noun phrases, we have here two noun phrases, Casa Blanca and White House. In such phrases, the Casa White, if you code switch, like Casa and White, make it Casa and White, and Blanca and House, they are ruled out, they are rejected, not accepted, because the combinations of ungrammatical in at least one of the languages involved. So in Spanish noun phrases, what's the rule here? Why is ungrammatical? In Spanish noun phrases, the Spanish noun phrases, they are made up of determiners. So check the order: determiners, then nouns, then adjectives, while the adjectives come before the nouns in English noun phrases. So here you see the adjectives are after the nouns in Spanish, and in English they come before the noun. But if you say, see here, casa white, so you see the white is adjective and this is at the end. So this is violating the grammar of English, because in English adjective comes before the noun. And same with Blanca also here. The casa white is ruled out by the equivalence constraint because it does not obey the syntactic rules of English, and the Blanca house is ruled out because it does not follow the syntactic rules of Spanish. Critics cite weaknesses of Sankoff and Poplex model. The free morpheme and equivalence constraint, these two constraints, are insufficiently restrictive, meaning there are numerous exceptions that occur. So only these things they are not sufficient to describe to cover the code switching, because there are numerous exceptions that occur here. For example, a free morpheme constraint does not account why switching is impossible between certain free morphemes. So it does not account for why switching is impossible between certain free morphemes. The sentence, the students had visto la pellicola italiana. Yes, I managed it. The students had seen the Italian movie. So it does not occur in Spanish-English code switching, yet the free morpheme constraint would seem to posit that it can. So here free morpheme constraint shows that it's possible, but this does not occur in Spanish-English code switching. I mean this example sentence. A lot to be done before more complete understanding of code switching phenomena is achieved, and linguists they continue to debate apparent counterexamples to proposed code switching theories and constraints. For example, we have some controversies here. The closed class constraint that is developed by Arvind Joshi posits that closed class items like pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions, they cannot be switched. So these pronouns, preposition, conjunctions, and all items in closed class, so they cannot be switched. This is according to Arvind Joshi. The functional head constraint, so this is another constraint that is developed by Bilazzi and others at all. They say that code switching cannot occur between a functional head like a complementizer, determiner, or inflection and its complement like a sentence, noun phrase, or verb phrase. So these constraints, among others, like the matrix language frame model, are controversial among linguists, positing alternative theories as they are seen to claim universality and make general predictions based upon specific presumptions about the nature of syntax. Mayer, Scotton, and McSwan debated the relative merits of their approaches in a series of exchanges published in 2005 in Bilingualism, Language and Cognition. Code switching and neuroscience. Neuroanatomy. Research has shown that the knowledge and use of more than one language alters both the anatomical and functional organization of the brain, which leads to different functional capabilities both in language and other areas. Certain regions of the bilingual brain have been repeatedly shown to differ from that of monolinguals in both size and neural activity. One such study of Micheli and others in 2004 showed significant increase in gray matter density in the left inferior parietal cortex of bilinguals relative to monolinguals as a specific instance of experience-dependent brain plasticity. Another study by Coggins et al. Showed that an increase in the volume of anterior mid-body of the corpus callosum, which is involved in primary and somatosensory function in bilinguals. So the research suggests the increase is an accommodation for the increased phonemic capacity requirement of bilinguals. Okay, this is a little about the neuroanatomy that code switching has function in this field as well. The assignment for this lecture is you will write a comprehensive a comparative note on different theories which I have included in this lecture, and others you will add to this because there are so many other theories I haven't included here. So you will just do your research, okay, and write the main claims of those theories and give your opinion on these theories and constraints as well. So what are different theories and constraints about code switching, and you will submit this assignment. I'll give this assignment on your easy class as well, and you will see the deadline there as well. So thank you very much. Wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi.